Canada and the United States, like most nations, engage in a variety of bilateral and multilateral activities that promote international cultural cooperation. Cultural relations is a crucial aspect of the Canada-US relations. The topic of this debate is on the subject of American influence, and in particular, we're going to be talking about if the American state engages in a contemporary form of cultural imperialism with Canada. Now, to give a quick background on this debate, the actual idea of American culture imperialism was actually put forth by American scholars themselves. Critics like Hector Schurler questioned American influence and actions during the Cold War, yet Canada really felt American culture imperialism in the 1920s when Canadian cinema was dominated by the United States. These things led to the Massey Commissions, which reflected the growing concern on part of the government about the impact of American culture, and it was a response to American culture imperialism. In the 1960s, historians like Norman Hiller point out the growing anti-Americanism. Yet in the 1990s, after the fall of the Soviet Union, and when Canada was drafting NAFTA, we start to see Canadian scholars question American influence and American hegemony, and point out the American mass culture and its effects on Canadian identity. In the 2000s until now, as new information is found, this debate is still going on as Canadian scholars really question this idea of American influence and put forward.
American culture has risen to be a global influence, with countries around the world following certain traits that have originated from the American region. It has been said that American culture has become the world's most widespread and influential culture today. Cultural influence has had a major impact on the world as the American structure has been perceived as the most successful, which is why these methods have been adopted by other states in order to become more efficient and powerful. American culture arises within aspects such as branding for food and clothing and the media industry for films, and due to their popular demand, other countries are allowing for these aspects to infiltrate into everyday society, which members would recognize as norms. Individuals subconsciously continue to contribute and follow the traits that they perceive as normal, which determines how they have been manipulated by the American culture.
Key actors on this debate on the Canadian side of things would include the Canadian, on a systematic level, I should say, would include the Canadian Ministry of Global Affairs. It would include Canadian embassies. However, on the individual level, it would include our current Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. However, there are important scholars that are also very crucial to this debate. These Canadian scholars that put forward this idea are Keith Arkinson and a Christopher Mall and a Kevin Mulcahy. There are specific actors in this debate from a systematic and state-level analysis. It would include the American State Department. It would include Hollywood. It would also include all the entities associated with Hollywood and American embassies. From an individual level analysis, it would include U.S. President Donald Trump, and it would include specific scholars very crucial to this debate on the American side, such as a David Rotherthoff and a John Tomlinson.
Even though Hollywood is not the largest media industry, it is the most successful industry that makes the most capital out of its films and media. Media imperialism is clearly evident as American media and technologies are heavily dominating other states and cultures with its high-grossing entertainment. Due to its popularity, the Hollywood film or American film structure has been used as a model that other media industries follow in order to become successful. Films that were produced in Hollywood that also encompass popular American actors have been highly promoted worldwide, demonstrating the big impact of American culture on other parts of the world. Furthermore, Americanization has been so powerful that even Canada is becoming worried about the lack of support for their Canadian artists. This has led them to allow for Canadian artists to regularly play for an hour on the CBC radio station in order to promote more of their own national artists instead of the radio being taken over by American music that is much more popular by demand. In terms of branding, the American coffee company Starbucks has been an influential actor on coffee drinkers, as it has branched out to various different countries with a sufficient lead in sales over other coffee companies. A Starbucks each day is a simple routine that individuals consider normal, however they are subconsciously contributing to the Americanization factor, whether it is within the United States or another state. In regard to influence on Canada, Starbucks still has brought itself a name over the big Canadian brand Tim Hortons, demonstrating the Americanization taking place within Canada. The Starbucks chain can easily be found in many places in Canada. However, Tim Hortons doesn't have much credibility within the United States, as it is seen as a Canadian brand and is overpowered by Americanization.
The last point has to do with scholar Paul Moody and his argument the United States engages in cultural imperialism in 4 ways. He takes the wiki links in 2010 and analyzes information and presents how the America is engaging in cultural imperialism. He presents 4 ways that the State Department is working with Hollywood to make sure that above everything else, American movies are shown freely and their dominance grows. The State Department scours for new Hollywood markets. It promotes free trade agreements to reduce any tariffs. On top of that, in relation with Canada specifically, the United States makes sure to press IPR laws that are in accordance with American innovators and making sure that American property stays American. Now, on the American side of this debate, there are 2 key scholars that formulate the ideas that debunk the idea of American culture imperialism. One that we're referencing is John Tomlinson. John Tomlinson provides a critique of culture imperialism theory and reveals major problems in the way that it is formulated. In his book, Culture Imperialism, A Critical Introduction, Tomlinson challenges the idea of imperialism and suggests that culture imperialism is growing in some respects, but the local transportation and interpretations of imported media products propose that cultural diversification is not at its ends in global society, as in fact growing. Tomlinson suggests that Americanization is due to globalization and is a natural process and is not intentional or forceful against anyone's will. The other scholar with very interesting views for the American side of this argument is the managing director of Kissinger Associates, David Rutherford. He actually mentions that the United States should embrace cultural imperialism because it promotes positive values such as opening to cultural change, the values of tolerance, and accepting technological and legal standards to provide free trade with enough security to do business with more countries. So in a sense, he says that cultural imperialism is a positive matter. Now, to understand the next trajectory of this debate and where it's going, it's best to reference scholars Christopher Malt and Kevin Mulcahy. They both state that Canadian-American dependency will continue, and to the point where American values and American media will be so prominent in our culture that we'll lose sight of who we are. We'll become an extended version of North American and Western culture, which is in fact just a broader American culture. When looking at the new UMCA deal, Canada is pressed on IP laws, and we're forcing to protect American players and stifle new innovations for Canadians. Nonetheless, we're headed in a trajectory where American culture imperialism will be unchallenged to the point where Canadian identity will be lost and it'll just be an extension of North American culture.